now. Ah, fuck those guys. If it was so important to them, they would come. The big problem with virtual reality today is not trying to get it to work. It is who it is working for. So what I want to frame this next part of the lecture around is why virtual reality is a big problem. Because if I was to tell you that one of the biggest companies in the world has invested billions and billions of dollars in this technology with the single aim of controlling everything in your life and being able to measure everything in your life, you'd be like, Lytton, you are a crazy person. I am going to call the ambulance right now to take you away to the special hospital where they put you in the room with the rubber balls because you've gone crazy. But I'm not crazy, because this is exactly what's happened. Over the last 8 years, one company has invested tens of billions of dollars in this technology with the aim of taking you out of this world and putting you into their world in order to make things better for them as a company. Because instead of just measuring what you do online, they can measure your heart rate and what excites you as an individual. What makes your pupils go big and black when you see something? How long you stare at an advert and what that product is. Because virtual reality technology consumes your senses so much that you can measure people's emotional responses in a way that isn't possible previously. And you're still going to think I'm crazy, but this is actually happening. What I'm talking about here is the move towards making virtual reality into a technology where we can exist all the time. It isn't there yet, but technically it's there. This is fine. We can run this as a technological system. It's just that we haven't got there yet as people. To dwell in virtual reality is to invoke technological imaginaries. Like, has anyone seen Ready Player One? Yeah? Anyone else seen the Steven Spielberg movie Ready Player One? Yeah? It's okay. It's okay. It's a good movie. It's a really scary movie. Not scary because it's scary because what it says is that in a really shitty, desolate future in the United States, people will escape reality by putting themselves in a completely alternative reality. People's lives will take place in a completely alternative reality, and that company in charge of that alternative reality will be the biggest company in the world and will rule everything. It's kind of not tacked upon in the movie, but there's this one huge company in the movie that runs everything. And you think, Spielberg, man, you've got to tell that story. You've got to tell that story of how those guys are really, really scary. They run the entire world. And he's like, no, I want to tell you the story about these guys. So you understand? Spielberg, tell me that story, man. And then me and Spielberg would fall out, right? We don't talk to each other anymore. We never talked to each other before. There is a huge amount of what we call dystopian fiction about virtual reality. You might have seen The Matrix, for example. Matrix, movie from 1999, famous at the time, still actually pretty cool film, pretty cool special effects and all that. What is the story of The Matrix? Well, The Matrix is about a bunch of guys who realize that they're living in a computer-generated simulation. A computer-generated simulation run by a series of machines who transform human beings into batteries to keep them going. So in order to do that, they plug us all into pods where they can harvest us for energy and instead give us a computer-generated world where we feel kind of happy in, while we are being used as batteries for those machines. That kind of sucks. We don't want to be batteries for no machine, right? But we don't realize it because we're distracted because we're all in this simulated reality. That basically is a story about virtual reality. If you think about what I told you virtual reality is, what the Matrix is, and what happens if the virtual reality gets mixed with what we now call AI, which everyone's supposed to be scared of, right? AI is going to take over everything. AI plus virtual reality equals we're fucked. That is the story of the Matrix, right? Matrix didn't start this. The first book to really mention that kind of virtual reality world was from 1984. It's a book called Neuromancer by the American author William Gibson. The first mention of the word the metaverse comes in the book Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson from 1992. I use this film as a really, really great example of it, Existence. It's another movie from 1999. It's a story by a Canadian director called David Cronenberg. It's a story about how a video games designer no longer can discern whether the game that they've made in virtual reality is real or not. And so they go around the film completely unaware of whether they're in the game or not, and people start dying, etc. And they're like, I don't know, is this real or is it isn't? And it's like, shit, I've blown my brain up because I've been messing around with this stuff for too long. And it's like, you know, virtual reality is a hallucination.
That's true. It's with The Rock and Kevin Hart, where they're in the video game. I can't remember what it's called. It was like a remake of an older.
Oh, Jumanji.
Jumanji, sure, yeah, sure. Yeah, no, and kind of this, it was a board game in the 90s, well, right? It was, the one with Robin Williams was a board game, and they updated it to a video game, right? Okay. So, at least people in the past thought it's probably a good idea. The history of like writing about virtual reality and virtual reality in films was all about, it might not be a great idea, you know? But we go ahead nevertheless, because you know one thing that tech bros always do? They ignore the warnings. Tech bros, now the ultimate tech bro, okay? They all go to the cinema in the summer and watch a film called Oppenheimer. Yeah? You heard of this film, Oppenheimer, big hit in the summer? That guy was the ultimate tech bro, Oppenheimer. Everyone was telling him, Robert, no, don't invent nuclear weapons. You're going to kill a shit ton of people. Guess what? He did anyway. That's what a tech bro does. They don't listen, they just do. So we're in a position now where tech bros like Mark Zuckerberg have gone forward and go, yeah, we've got consumer VR now. We've got the way of making people live in a virtual world. Did they think this was a good idea? They didn't even stop to think about it. What has happened to make this situation? Well, fortunately, I can talk about this because I wrote this theory. See, this is the cool bit when I do this lecture. It's like, you know when you talk about other theorists when you're a lecturer, you're like, damn, I'm talking about this guy. This is my shit now. So, I wrote this book, this is my theory, right? I call the whole process of virtual reality a technological lab. In the 1980s and 90s, you had a whole bunch of people who were, for better or worse, were coming up with virtual reality as a solution to problems. They figured, you know, we have problems, well, we can start creating a virtual world which solves some of these problems. We can make a nicer world for other people. It's a utopian project. It's probably going to fail, because all utopian projects do fail. But at least you can say those guys had their heart in the right place. They wanted to do something nice. They wanted to do something positive. They wanted to take what was good in this world, put it in a virtual world, so it was just the good stuff. Take away the bad stuff, right? But in that interim period, all of culture has changed. We now don't live in the culture we had in the 1990s. We now have digital culture. And the key thing about digital culture is this. Everything we do is solely designed to make a bunch of white guys rich. That's it. Everything you do, every picture you post on Instagram, who owns that picture? Instagram. Everything you visit online, you are tracked. And that is added to your profile. You know, there is you, you're real, okay? Kind of. But over here, there's a digital version. All the data that's been collected ever, the digital self. That is culture. Everything we do is harvested and processed and then sold back to us. You know, you've all got that feeling, right, of when you've been looking at something online and all of a sudden a pop-up ad comes on from Amazon, right, telling you, do you want to buy this thing? Yeah, you've all had that, right? Here's the bit that's going to freak you out. They knew that before you were looking at that thing. Because they'd already been collecting the information about you for years beforehand. It's not that they were predicting it, they were pushing you towards doing that. The reason why you were looking at that shit online is you have been pushed that way with all sorts of suggestions that you don't even realise about. That is the world that we live in. And people might say, well, we could get rid of that world. You know, I'm just going to take this thing, and walk off, never have it again. Yeah? Okay. Good for you. Nice one. Hope that works out for you. You'll never get a job. You'll never do anything of any worth. You know, it's about as stupid as saying, you know, oh, do you know what the real pollution problem? Do you know what we should do? Get rid of the roads. So that's not fucking work. We're all going to starve. That's not going to work. Okay? This is the world that we're in.
Does that go into the cybernetics thing, the line curve idea of the loops?
I mean, you can, but it's not the point that I make. The point that I make is always this. Virtual reality concepts came along at a time where that world didn't exist. Okay? So you can have all sorts of utopian ideas about virtual reality because the reality of digital culture didn't exist that way. Reality of digital culture is something that really doesn't start to form until the early 2000s when in particular Google realised, holy crap, we've just collected like loads of information on what people want for the last few years. What can we do with that? I don't know, we can sell it. Yeah. And all of a sudden, you know, Google goes from being a search engine and a nice cuddly company to being like rich as shit overnight. Virtual reality still didn't exist in consumer form at that point. So the entirety of culture since that has been all about data collection, data harvesting, data processing, and selling things back to the consumer in a really fine-grained way. If you want to know what the digital revolution is, that's it. The virtual reality was over here on the timeline. Now it comes back at this point in time and says, virtual reality is like, I'm ready. I'm ready to be used now, people. It's like, ooh, what can we use it for? We've got this model of what we're going to do, which is, I'm going to take everything about you from the moment you were born, forever, and create a digital other. Well, do you know what I can do now? I can put this headset on your head, and instead of having just online tracking data, I can have your heart rate, I can have your brain impulses, I can have your attention figures, I can know what you look at, when you look at, how long you look at it for, what it does to your heart rate, what it does to your galvanic skin response, I can know what emotional response you're going on. But if I'm on Facebook, I'm like, hallelujah.
You got the Apple Watch too, it's even worse.
Hell yeah! How many of you have got one of those things? Put it in the bin. Okay, I've got a watch, it ain't smart. Do you know what? It tells the time. Does the job. You've got a smartwatch? Bin, people. Okay. I call this the technological lab. Basically, we had a technology that had, for better or worse, you know, I'm not sure they were all great intentions, but there was a good set of intentions underpinning it. But it wouldn't work. And by the time it does come along, culture has changed. And the technology now changes to fit the culture. And the problem with virtual reality is it's so good for that culture. It's scary good for that culture. Because if I'm like Facebook, right? Meta, whatever the company's called now. I own Instagram. Sure? So every time people are scrolling Instagram, I'm waiting, and what I'm measuring is not what they're looking at. I am measuring that, but I'm measuring something really important. I'm measuring when they stop. See, when we're on Instagram, right, we're scrolling, yeah? And then we stop. And that's when they start measuring. Because then they know what you're looking at, how long you're looking at it. And then they know what content you really want, right? Scrolling through, so, you know, my next door neighbour's got a new car, fuck you, and, you know, damn! Check out these headphones, bitch. Yeah? That's what I'm after. And then Instagram's like, need some headphones. Guy needs headphones. We're going to give him headphones on his feed. We're going to give him every kind of headphones on his feed. That's what they measure. Now you think about it in virtual reality when you've got a headset on. They're just how long you look. And what that does to your pupil dilation, because if you're excited by something, your pupils will dilate. Well, scanners in the headset can measure that. You can augment that with all sorts of things. Additionally, now, they haven't gone down this road yet. But it's easy to build in sensors into the straps and so on in order to measure excitation of brain waves, galvanic skin response, we call it, how much sweat you produce in a particular reaction. Every excitation reaction we as human beings produces a small change in the electrical conductivity of our skin. You can measure all that stuff. Those guys in the 80s weren't thinking of this. That went in their mind, because that whole model of how you do business didn't exist. It came in the 2000s. Now when virtual reality comes back, it's perfect for this. Because it takes all those things they already do to us, and it makes them sharper. It gives them more. It gives them information they can't get yet. It makes it all better. So it's no surprise then, the biggest investor in the world in virtual reality has been the people who brought you Facebook and Instagram, Meta. Because this is a technology, if it was ever so built for those guys, this is it. The whole techno-utopianism of the 80s and 90s has been crushed by companies like Facebook, Google, Apple, etc., who've consolidated the internet and made it into a mad rush for who can make the most money. Virtual reality has fallen under that as well. Virtual reality now is funded by a company who is only interested in one thing. I was giving you the Matrix just now, and the story of the Matrix is how machines take you and make you into a battery. Yeah? Digital companies take you and make you into money. That is the whole thing that they do. You all know who the customer of Instagram is, right? Yeah, it's not you. It's the company that's paying for the adverts on your feed. That's the customer. You're the product. You're the thing that's being sold. And they look at a technology like virtual reality and think, well, we can just make a better product. If our product is selling you guys, virtual reality is a technology that can help us make a better product. Because we can measure a whole bunch of stuff that we were never able to get before. And it's like people come up with all these ideas. It's like Zuckerberg, man. He's really just into video games and stuff. That's why he's into VR. No. Always follow the money.
They tried to make like a money for Facebook, the Libra thing.
Yeah, trying to make his own cryptocurrency for his own virtual worlds, you know?
Yeah. To literally take you out.
You think he tried to do it? They parked it, that's all.
Yeah.
It's still on.
Yeah.
Okay? So, when VR was seen as a radical medium that could achieve unparalleled levels of immersion, it's now been co-opted by companies like Facebook, who don't see it as doing that. They see it as an unparalleled way to take your information from you and make you into a product. So that's the wider political and socio-economic context in which virtual reality now exists. It's still cool. I'm not saying otherwise. It's a cool experience, right? It rocks. But it's cool in the same way that Instagram's cool. Or WhatsApp is cool. You've got to think about who owns it and what they get out of it. And when you think about that, they're not doing it for our good, right? They're not doing this stuff to make us feel good. They're doing this stuff to make us into more efficient units of economic consumption, which is really all social media is about. It's taking us and making us into nice little bundles of data that can be constantly traded on open data markets. You know, right now somebody's buying your data, like as you sit here right now. Your data's being traded algorithmically tens of thousands of times every hour. Somebody's just bought you. Like right now when we were sitting here, somebody's just bought me. As I've been talking for the last 30 seconds about this, I've been bought and sold 30 times. Scary, right? Do you know how much money I made from those transactions?
Nothing.
A big fat fucking zero. I'm really angry about it, man, because it's me.
How do we get to own the debt? Is that ever going to happen where we can own the digital bonds or is that just...
You will collapse the business model of every major company in the world if you do that. Okay? I mean, it's weirdly, that is an argument that Jaron Lanier makes. The best way to have an egalitarian digital present and future is if, there's no problem. You'll say, yeah, you can trade my data, fine, but I take a cut.
Yeah.
For every trade you make, I take 25% of that. It's not going to make us a huge amount of money every year. Facebook don't make money because I'm interesting. Facebook makes money because there's like 4 billion of us using their services, right? So they make microtransactions basically. They're making shit off me, right? I'm not interested enough to make any money. So I'm not going to make a great deal of money per year out of all the transactions they make out of me either. But I think the estimate is that the average person is worth about $78 per year to a company like Meta. So if I took 25% of that, I'm making a big fat $23. You know what I mean? It ain't doing much.
Yeah.
I might get a beer. I probably won't even get a slice of pizza.
What about not for money reasons, but for processing? So instead of them processing the data, you have like the raw data to make decisions for yourself.
Another interesting idea, but those ideas have been expressed a lot over the past as well. I think what the big problem is here is that people are lazy. Nobody's going to want to do that. And if you gave that amount of control to people, what you get is a two-part two-tier system, where you have very savvy users who actually want to undertake this kind of control of their own personal data, and then 99% of other people don't give a shit and don't want to get involved in that. Do you know what? That 1% who's actually interested, they're just going to cut off. Because they're going to just make a shit ton of money out of the people who don't want to actually do that. I should add that whole version of events where we get 25% cut, that ain't never happen. Okay, that's never going to happen. It would be nice. So, why virtual reality? So companies that have been involved in virtual reality, well, Meta are the big one, right? Google put a lot of money into this at first. They backed down, but they spent loads and loads of money on doing it first up. Apple are now in a big way, right? So there you've got biggest social media company in the world, the second biggest infrastructure company behind Google is Apple, right? And you had Google themselves who invested a lot of money in this, who are the biggest phone company in the world, amongst other things. What does it give you? So let's just take Meta as the example. What does this give Meta? A platform to dictate content and closely monitor and measure user performance. So you decide what's on it, and you then measure how people react to it. So if we think about it just in terms of advertising, you're going to decide every advert that people are going to see is just going to be from your customers. And then you're going to measure which ones work for which people so you can target people super directed. So you control the entire platform that people do all this on. Does that sound good? If you're like Mark Zuckerberg, Meta, does that sound like a good thing? Hell yes. You're thinking, there ain't no competition here. There's no Twitter/X. There's no TikTok coming along stealing everyone's attention. I'm going to control everything about this. Thinking, dang, that is what we want. It is all about this one simple word, control. So what has been the aim of Meta as a company? We're going to make the hardware, so we're going to make the headsets, we're going to make the stuff inside, the virtual worlds themselves, and we're going to measure everything. So we're going to, it's like, you want to be in VR, you've got to be in Meta. That's it. You haven't got a choice. You have to engage. At least in this day and age, we can kid ourselves, you know, I don't have a Facebook account, I don't have an Instagram account, I'm not part of Meta. That's not true. Meta, even if you don't have an account with them, they have an account about you. Okay? They're tracking you still, that's how they work. And they sound creepy, right? Yeah, they are creepy. I do love this course, the students on this course, because somebody will always, like, at some point will say, well, I'm looking for a job interview in like Meta or Facebook or something. You evil fuck. They do pay good. But
what about like decentralized like VR stuff? Is that anything going to be in the future? Like
decentral. Okay, so in the past we've had sort of the development of web VR and decentralization of VR based around sort of an egalitarian system where anyone could use the operating system. So Mozilla were really heavily invested in this as a company. The problem is this. A Meta Quest headset costs at the moment, I think the new one's $400. About that, right? What's the actual manufacturing cost, you know? Okay, so let's say on average, a VR headset might cost you 400 quid, right? The cost is 600.
oh, so it's taking costs on everyone.
Meta as a company can sell them under cost. Because they can take that financial hit, they're big enough to do that. $200 a headset for Meta, they don't fucking care. That's nothing. For a company that's making as much money as them, that is small. To do a decentralized virtual reality system, you have to build that. And remember, that's like $600, $700, whatever it costs them to make the Quest 3. That's because they make it at that price because they're huge. They operate with economies of scale, right? If you're setting out to make a VR headset as a small company, your costs are way, way higher than that. You can't hire an entire factory in China to make this stuff. Okay, you're going to have to get in at a much different cost level. So let's say you're going to make exactly the same headset as Meta, but you're going to have to retail it at $1,200. Because once you've brought in all your marketing costs, all your manufacturing costs, all your shipping costs, and so on, you get to market and it's going to land in at $1,200. And right next to you in the store is the same thing that works exactly the same way for $400. Which do you pick? You know? It's impossible. Now, virtual reality is such an expensive technology to develop that it was always going to go this way, really. Because you can't have small startups. So it's an interesting thing that Meta Quest and these technologies, before Meta took over, they were called Oculus. And Oculus was a company that was founded in a sort of homegrown kind of way by a guy called Palmer Luckey. It turned out to be a kind of insane Trumpist, but there's done really weird things since, which kind of make you think people who work in this might not be right. But because he's kind of taken, he had a really good idea, and he's stuck like 20 bad ideas since. It's really strange. Anyway, when Lucky was doing this was a Kickstarter. So he got his experimental headset done with Kickstarter, but very quickly into the life cycle of that, it bought. Because they saw, oh my god, this kid's kind of got this working. If we pump a lot of money into this, we can make a consumer product. Typically, I mean, Apple are the classics of doing this, right? They wait for somebody to kind of get something working, then buy the whole thing out and just put a nice case around it. This is what happened with the iPod. And Meta jumped on it, or Facebook as they were then, jumped on that idea straight away. It was just like, oh god, this kid has just about got this ready for consumer stuff. We pump a lot of money in here, we can get it to the consumer market pretty quickly, we can buy this kid out, we can make like $1 billion off it. And there's 1.5 billion. So, you know, it's interesting, but the companies that have actually been pumping money in, Facebook, Google, Samsung, Microsoft, HTC, it's these companies, it's that scale, because it's an expensive technology. What I call it is a platform extension. VR is a platform extension. We live in a platform economy, where platforms like Meta, Google, etc., TikTok, they exist as self-enclosed environments where those companies make money from measuring what we do on them. This is an extension of that. But instead of just having a platform that we access on a phone, it's a platform we access through a headset. It's a much more powerful platform because of the promises that we can have around immersion and so on. So I'm going to skip through some of these things. And there's a lot of text on these slides. If you want to go back and read them, you have them up online, right? Here's an important phrase. Reese explained digital oil to you guys. Have you heard that? Okay. What do you think digital oil is? Exactly. That. Oil, in our contemporary world, we know what that stuff is, right? You know, that black stuff that comes out of the ground. If you're fortunate enough to open the land where it comes on, you get rich as shit, right? Because oil is money. In our contemporary society, data is money. The company that has the most data and uses it most effectively becomes the richest company, like those guys, like Meta have become, right? Like Amazon, and all these other guys who collect and harvest information. So, what I argue is that the technological lag of virtual reality has meant that it's gone from being something that had a kind of weird but kind of cute idea of what we could do with technology to make a better world for each other. Instead of that, it's gone to being, holy shit, this is the best thing ever for making digital work. This is the best thing ever for making us into a resource to be sold. Jaron Lanier calls virtual reality in the contemporary world the digital Skinner box. This refers to an American psychologist, B.F. Skinner, who did many experiments across a number of years called, which can be summarized as operant conditioning. What Skinner learned was that you could get animals and indeed people to do things if you rewarded them in particular ways. You know, like when you've got a dog, and you want to treat, make it do a trick or something, roll over. Roll over. When it does, you say, good, and you give it a treat, and then the dog kind of looks stupid. And then roll over, and it finally does it get good. And the dog's like, getting this now. When that thing there says roll over, if I do that thing, you get that thing. Yeah. And then it learns the form of operant conditioning, where the reward mechanism means that we repeat the action over and over again, right? Skinner developed a box which could basically teach animals. He was a mad guy, Skinner. He actually taught two pigeons how to play table tennis against each other, just on these principles. They held the table tennis bats in their mouths and hit the ball back and forth back to each other all the time. It went on for ages. It was pretty cool. Just on these principles. Now, what Jaron Lanier says is that in the hands of companies like Meta, VR is like one of these. We can condition people in it. Keep rewarding them for doing things that we want them to do. So if you keep looking at the good things, buying the good stuff from our customers, you get better user experience. You learn that actually this is the best way to operate in this world. It would be really, really useful thing to do. But of course, companies like Meta don't stop there. Because what do they want you to do? It goes from doing the good things to voting for the right guy. Yeah, exactly. Voting for the right presidential candidate, not voting for the other guy that we don't support. And all this sort of good shit. So the Skinner box idea is really, really scary and has scary implications for the future of democracy if everyone was using it. As we saw at the beginning, most of you haven't even tried it, so let's not worry too much just yet. But we're basically putting a really powerful technology in the hands of companies that use algorithms to nudge and push us towards certain decisions already. And we're not asking critical questions about this at all. So like last year in the UK, Meta's headset was one of the top selling products for Christmas. They reduced the price down. Loads of kids got a Meta Quest 2 for Christmas. And nobody I know asked the question, is this a good idea? To be giving children such a powerful piece of technology powered by a company that we already know manipulates children into doing things. Along with every other person, by the way. I'm not saying that they don't pick on us. They do.
The way you framed it, it's almost like you're not giving the said to the kids, you're giving the kids the meta.
You're giving the kids the meta, yeah. I mean, I think it's probably not on the same level of safety, but, you know, if you want to give your kids a better present, give them a crack pipe. You know, because, you know, it's kind of the same thing. You know, you give your kids over to crack, you give them the meta. Who's worse? You know, I'm not sure, you know. Crack never tried to sell you to an advertiser, I guess. Now, VR environments, when we think of them, if you guys have tried it, you know, I guess, more of this, but the idea is sometimes they can be quite isolating. But actually, since the beginning of VR, it's not been about isolation, it's been about coexistence, that we're there with other people, they're a genuine environment where we coexist. And so, we've seen the emergence of lots of different types of spaces in VR for coexistence. So, Facebook Spaces, fortunately, doesn't exist anymore. Although it's just called something different. It's called Horizon Worlds now. It kind of sucks. That's actually a screenshot from a Horizon Worlds previously. This has been pursued by a lot of companies. So AltSpace and VTime were early goes this. AltSpace was acquired by Microsoft and then it was shut down by Microsoft a couple of months ago because Microsoft wanted to make a more efficient one, which they'll launch soon. The idea of social virtual reality is where the money really is. If you can get people socially interacting in spaces that you completely own, that's the goal. Because that's really what's happened with these business models with Facebook and so on. You're getting people to interact with one another on a platform that you own, right? That's how the money has come from. But if you can get an entire environment where they're immersed completely in it and interacting, it's like, what are Facebook after here? Well, they're after all the interactions that we have not on their platform at the moment. We can get you to do those in a platform we control. We can't control real life. You know, Facebook's looking and saying, hell, we can't do that. So let's make an alternative to real life, and then we can control that, right? This idea is basically the metaverse. When you see the word metaverse, what you're looking at is an attempt to create a platform where we can do everything. We can have education, we can work, we can do our shopping, we can do all our socialization with other people, we can watch sports, we can, you know, we can date, we can do all this sort of stuff, we can do all our exercises in an interface here where, you know, it's responsive in this world, you know? All of this stuff can go on in this space. So basically, you never have to unplug. You never have to be outside, right? Now, at the moment, the metaverse sucks. There's not enough to do, there's not enough people there. But that's not, I can see why they're never going to give this idea up, because if you crack it, and if you get people to get onto that space, it's the ultimate money maker. It's the company that gets this to work is automatically the biggest company that's ever existed and will be forever. Like most things on social media, the culture of social VR though is hugely problematic. If you look at something like virtual reality chat, which is an application that's freely available, you're basically anonymous on it. You have a username, you have an avatar, but it doesn't have to look like you. You can put any name you want, which means that you can be, you know, as people are on it, really racist, really sexist, really abusive, making horrible comments to people all the time, and then what you do, you just delete your account and start again, right? So there's a lot of what we call troll-based behaviour going on it, which at the moment is a big problem. People won't want to hang out in a space like that, so that needs to be addressed. Weirdly, there's like sexually explicit behaviours in virtual reality. People will, you know, grope other avatars without their permission, and you might think, okay, but it actually happens. So obviously, you know, while you're an avatar, you can't actually feel that. Well, actually you're aiming towards technologies where you can have a full body suit to feel that. So we need to think about this sort of stuff in the future, you know. Drawn Outlaw and Duckworth's research, they interviewed 13 female users of social VR. These users felt very guarded in these environments and they'd had a huge amount of sexual abuse in these environments, harassment in these environments. And there is no conduct warnings. There's nobody out there saying, you know, don't do that. Because people look at it and think, well, you know, if you did that in a public space in real life, if you went over and you sexually harassed somebody, that's an arrest offence. Okay, you can't do that shit. But this isn't the real world. You're not really doing it. But the person who's in that avatar is hearing that stuff. You know, they're sensing that emotion. You know? So, although it's different, there's a whole set of different things going on here. It's still going to be problematic. Right? People don't just shake this shit off. It's still difficult. Harassment, trolling behaviour, being awful to other people. It all goes on in VR. It's a lot of fun. I'm making it sound a lot of fun, this technology. Right? Really selling this stuff here. So, if the metaverse ever takes off, what are we going to have? Worlds built by companies, worlds controlled by companies, saturated with advertising tailored to you, with ubiquitous and invisible data harvesting of activity in the body, and with unparalleled levels of control and potential of control. What a sales pitch that is. Do you think I could get a job with Meta? No, because those guys will never ever speak to me again after all I said about them in that book in 2018, which I put online for you to read. Because, yeah, believe me, I got an interview with one of the people who designed their VR systems in 2018, and I said awful things about them on the basis of that interview, and basically, their design people have said we're never going to talk to you ever again. I don't fucking care. Basically, techno-utopianism visions of VR have failed. They're gone. Instead, we are now in that version of VR. And that's not a great place where we should be, basically. Do we even want to be in that sort of place? I don't think we do. I really don't think we do. So I've got a bunch more context about the metaverse here, but I've kind of made this. But basically, I want to finish up on this slide. There's a couple more slides after this as well, but the ones previous to this will give you a lot of stuff. If you want to do an essay on this, as long as you reference it properly. What we have is an example of a company, Meta, making an enormous gamble. What they've decided to do is say, they're sitting at the table in Las Vegas, right? On the roulette wheel. So here, it's $25 million. And we're going to all put it on black number 11. Black number 11 is the metaverse works. And we all go and live there. Is that $25 million? Billion dollars, I should say, not million. $1 billion. If it comes up black 11, well, that turns into trillions instantly. So it's a small bet to make, really, because the payoff is incredible if they get it right. Basically, we're in the process of looking at, and it's still ongoing this, is that bet going to work? They've anchored their entire future on it. The amount of money they've put into this is amazing. All their research and development stuff has gone into this over the last 7-8 years. They haven't done anything else. That's why Instagram hasn't changed for a long time. Why Facebook hasn't changed a lot. Why WhatsApp has got no new features. They've not been working on that stuff. They've been working on this stuff. It's a huge, huge gamble that people will want to be in that space. And if we don't want to be there, that gamble's going to fail. There's going to be long-term repercussions. Already, more than 25,000 people have lost their jobs in Meta in the last 3 years. Basically because they're saying paying off. Their projections of what would happen have not come off yet. And that's a real problem for the company. If you want to think about the issues, low democracy, participation, ownership, you know, the same issues we get with every digital technology, basically, but on major scale. So, virtual reality is really exciting, but also very dangerous. It's a really cool thing to try, but don't get too obsessed. It's a really excellent way to spend your time, play some games on, but I wouldn't go living there if I was you. potential is enormous, the possibility is really exciting. If it could be harvested for human good, imagine, like, you know, you had a group of socially excluded people, lonely, give them all a virtual reality headset, put them in a community with other people. You're going to solve loneliness in one fell swoop. It'd be amazing. Think of the positivity of that for human beings. It'd be cool.
But that's not the world we live in.
That's not the world we live in. Exactly. So, the applications are potentially incredible, but what it's being used for isn't so good. Okay. Nice seeing all you guys here, and I hope your course goes well.
Thank you.